Frieza revives again for the small screen, but it's the same screen for all of you because this is Dragon Ball Dissection. Welcome back to Oh, yeah. So it turns out that almost immediately after I finished the various versions of the Battle of Gods arc, Dragon Ball Super Beerus decided it was going to be a thing. January 24th's Genki Damatsuri, well, it was the 25th in Japan, but it was the 24th here, announced a remake of the animated story arc as well as confirmation on an animated adaptation of at least one of the manga-exclusive storylines. This is never going to end. I am extremely tickled how many of you left jokes on pretty much every platform, and I am touched that so many of you thought of me first. While I find it laughably odd that yet another retelling is being added to a story that is barely more than a decade old, I'm not particularly rattled by it. People are acting as if I have to trudge on over to Battle of Gods right now, just as I closed the door on it. And, well, no. That's something only future me might have to worry about. I've pretty much always covered Dragon Ball Dissection by chronological release order. So this doesn't really matter right now, even if it was a completed, aired product at the time I'm writing this. Whatever this return of Super is doing or is going to do is not going to have any impact on how I cover the original iterations of Super. Besides, I had been warned during DBD December that this was probably coming, and while I'm always skeptical of anything I can't independently verify, I did have more than enough time to get used to the idea. So who knows how this will go? Maybe this will end up being the best version, maybe it'll suck, maybe none of us will care. It's impossible to say for now. I guess for the purposes of my own self-interest, I am hoping this resurgence of Super might help my view counts and patronage for the foreseeable future. That would be incredibly nice. But that's not why we're here today. We're here to talk about Resurrection F. Again. As was probably clear in my DBD episode on the movie, I am not a big fan of Resurrection F. It was a huge step down after Battle of Gods. My biggest overall complaint was how it set up interesting story and character threads, but never did anything with them, preferring instead to develop them only just enough to get to the fight. If any story could benefit from the expansion afforded by an episodic retelling, it's this one. It's time to start finding out if they made the most of the opportunity. Just like with the animated series Battle of Gods material, or should I now say the first run of that? Just like with that, Resurrection F starts the story prior to the events of the movie, allowing for a few cozier episodes, or as many fans like to call them, slice of life. Episodes in this category were often the ones I enjoyed the most when I was watching the series as it aired. This time we start at the Son home. Goku wants to train with Kaio again, but Chi-Chi won't let him. When Goku reminds her that she agreed he could go train after he presented her with all that sweet, sweet devil money, Chi-Chi reveals that she already spent all of it. All 100 million zenny of it. Now, before I go any further, let me remind you that Dragon Ball Dissection primarily attempts to view material through the lens of its original context, and I just don't think what we later find out about the money is some big reveal they were holding back. Even if it is, I'm just going to take Chi-Chi at her word for now, especially since I remember this being a big discussion point at the time these episodes came out. Are we good? Okay. I think I've stood up for Chi-Chi more than most, but yeah, this sounds pretty awful. Perhaps the family was in large amounts of debt and this helped them get back on their feet. That's certainly possible. But given how flippant Chi-Chi is about this, she comes across as incredibly frivolous, cruelly so. Now, Toriyama had once said that zenny was equivalent to yen. However, by this point, Jocko the Galactic Patrolman had shown a different exchange rate, rendering 100 billion zenny as 150 billion yen. I guess that would be Dragon Ball's yen rather than Japan's, but let's assume they're the same and do the math. Just to put this into perspective, converting from zenny to yen to dollar and adjusting for inflation from 2015 to now, Chi-Chi has blown through $1,325,357.87. To an extent, it's futile to critique this from a position of serious reality. Sure, you could say that Chi-Chi is a terrible wife for wasting that money. You could also remember that Goku once blew through nearly 500,000 zenny in a single meal, meaning that even if feeding Goku was the only expense they were using this money for, it would be gone in just over 2 months. Boy, there sure is a lot of math in Dragon Ball Dissection today. Suffice it to say, this is a high-maintenance family, and this whole thing is silly. If there is anything I feel I should be annoyed by, it's not wondering whether Chi-Chi is wasting money, it's in realizing that this is Dragon Ball Super hitting the reset button. Goku and his family receive a windfall, and by the next story arc, everything's back to the way it was. Get on that tractor, Goku. Things don't tend to change in Dragon Ball Super, and this is a prime example of that. But even in that regard, this is not that big of a deal because the money never changed things anyway. We don't see any significant purchases from this money. We don't see the Son family living it up only to lose it all and end up back where they started. The only narrative purpose the money served was to buy Goku's freedom to allow him to train. Within a few episodes, he's going to find a way to do that without money. But it allows Chi-Chi to turn the screws on Goku for a bit. And it puts Goku back on the tractor, which at least serves this episode. The main thrust of the episode is that Mr. Satan has naturally taken credit for saving the world yet again, and he holds a press conference to explain what happened. He happily recounts that a god of destruction threatened their world, but he can't quite remember the name. It's Beavis, that's it. We're treated to Mr. Satan's somewhat distorted imaginings of how he confronted and defeated God of Destruction Beavis. I especially like how he imagines himself becoming a god as Super Saiyan Satan. I also think it's a nice touch that he envisions Beavis as a lizard creature, perhaps a subtle reference to Beerus' original design before Toriyama came in and changed him to a cat. The festivities are interrupted by some lion-like aliens from the planet Snack. They're not here to attack, but to offer their greetings and thanks to the champion who fought off the God of Destruction. Naturally, they have their own champion who wants to test Mr. Satan's strength in a fight. Satan can't reach any of the actual fighters, but Goku happens to show up because he needed to get his tractor fixed. Satan enlists Goku to pretend to be his protege and fight in his place. Unfortunately for Goku, Chi-Chi and Piccolo are also there, grocery shopping for Gohan's family. Well, Goku needs to beat a hasty retreat, but doesn't want people to see him flying, so he gets Mr. Satan to punch him. Goku pretends to fall out of the ring, grabs his tractor, and he and the tractor continue to fall up and away. This may be rehashing Mr. Satan's one and only joke, but this is hilarious. As always, Mr. Satan manages to hold on to his reputation through dumb luck. The Snackians have a mortal enemy. Because they're cats, they're terrified of dogs. And who should Mr. Satan have brought with him but his dog, Bay? One bark from Bay drives them off and everyone thinks Mr. Satan did it. This is definitely the kind of story that plays to the strengths of Dragon Ball Super. When I first saw this in 2016, I tweeted that it was the best episode ever, and while perhaps there have since been other episodes that are just as fun, my opinion hasn't fundamentally changed now that I'm seeing it again. But when I wrote that, I hadn't yet seen the next episode. It opens with the two Kaioshin musing over a couple of planets they assumed Beerus had destroyed, but Shin now isn't too sure. It's more that they've disappeared, as if by magic. I'm sure it's not important. Back on Earth, Kuririn goes to visit Goku while he's working. Well, working is a relative term. Not gonna lie, sometimes I do this while I should be making these videos. Kuririn is here to show off his stylish tacos shirt and to ask Goku to punch him in the face, presumably as penance for the tacos shirt. He wants to find out how strong Goku has become. Well, he learns. In classic Looney Tunes and MGM fashion, poor Mr. Tacos smashes through all different kinds of scenery before Goku is able to teleport in to catch him. And then he misses the catch. If Dragon Ball Super was a straight comedy show, it might be my favorite. When number 18 asks Kuririn why he let Goku do that, he answers that he had been wondering if he had been right to retire from martial arts and now knows what he wants to do. Setting up the next aspect of the story, Bluma has been quite literally whining and dining Whis, treating him to all kinds of Earth delicacies in the hopes that he'll save her and hers should Beerus set his sights on Earth again. This has been going on for quite some time, and Vegeta is only just now learning this. Ironically, because he's been away on mountaintops, sulking about how he'll get stronger than Beerus, Vegeta totally missed the fact that Beerus' teacher was in his own backyard this whole time. There's a lesson to be learned here, and for once, Vegeta is eager to swallow his pride and learn it. Especially when Whis comments that if Vegeta could better control his ki, he could be stronger than Son Goku. Vegeta decides he has to beat his wife at her... Okay, I could do better with that phrasing. Vegeta decides he has to beat Bluma at her own game by likewise plying Whis with food. And I will give Dragon Ball Super credit. They make up for lost bingo time by incorporating a little bit of Vegeta's Battle of Gods bingo dance into this sequence. I appreciate the effort. Unfortunately, there is not a single place Vegeta takes Whis that Bluma has not already taken him. Vegeta decides he'll have to do the cooking himself and make Whis his special omelet with rice. Bluma is surprised he can even separate an egg. So, yeah, on one hand, I already complained during the last arc that food was the only gag they could give Vegeta, and they're doing it again. Also, the joke here is that Vegeta can't cook when he quite expertly made takoyaki then, from scratch. But on the other hand, Vegeta repeatedly failing to properly crack an egg into his mixing bowl is one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. The fact that he ends up with a baby chick in one hand who mimics his every facial expression is one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. I haven't seen this show in 10 years, but I have never forgotten the egg scene. Vegeta has but one more chance. He uses Bluma's trump card, the one impossibly delicious dish she'd been saving for an emergency. Cup ramen. Again, this is just a brilliant joke. Of all the expensive delicacies these characters have served up, it's the cheap instant soup that clinches the deal for Vegeta. Also, I love cup ramen myself, at least when I'm able to find vegetarian variants of it, so I totally understand why this gambit works. Bluma is at least nice enough to send Vegeta back to Beerus' planet with a new training outfit, the one we were introduced to in the Resurrection F movie. The next episode continues on the character comedy route, but jumps ahead 6 months to allow Pan to be born. Thankfully, her introduction proves the series has more than just the one Mr. Satan joke. Other peeks into Dragon Ball history have shown Mr. Satan as the doting grandfather to Pan, but this is inspired. He teams up with Gohan to play-act little adventures where Satan is the evil kidnapper and Gohan becomes the Great Saiyaman to save her. And it's Great Saiyaman with the helmet and cape, the best Great Saiyaman. It is the cutest thing in the world, and it's so uniquely them. I mean, what's even the point of becoming a superhero if you can't use it to play make-believe with your kid? I also love seeing that Gohan and Mr. Satan have developed such a chummy relationship. Sadly, Chi-Chi has to come in and ruin all the fun. I think I'm out of defenses for her by this point. I mean, true, they are tossing a baby around, but she's fine. In fact, it's only the surprise of Chi-Chi's reaction that almost causes them to drop her. Look, the mother is fine with it, the father is fine with it, but out of it, Chi-Chi. It gets even more annoying that her stated reason has less to do with Pan's safety than it does with her desire for Pan to grow up as a quiet, gentle girl. Mr. Satan wants Pan to grow up and be a martial artist and to follow in his footsteps. Because Chi-Chi is a responsible person and not at all a control freak, she barricades Gohan and Satan in a storage room. Gohan has to call Kuririn to summon his family. Kuririn also brings Bluma along because the introduction of Kuririn as a police officer is moved ahead to this point, and in this version she gets involved hunting down the criminals he's chasing. It's a good thing too because Bluma is able to intercede as a trusted third party. She easily relates to Chi-Chi's frustration about living with battle maniacs, noting that Vegeta didn't pay the slightest bit of attention when Trunks was born. However, she notes that Gohan has become a scholar and even Son-kun is doing honest work despite their martial arts backgrounds. Then she turns the question over to Videl. Videl notes that being a martial artist is how she met Gohan in the first place, and she also likes traditionally girly things. Ultimately, Videl wants Pan to decide for herself what she wants to be, which, yeah, should be the obvious answer. It's a shame it takes this level of intervention to get Chi-Chi to understand that. But given that this has been Chi-Chi's ground state ever since becoming a mother, I am happy the show is taking a few moments to earnestly address this. As long as addressing is happening, let's talk about Videl for a moment. It's certainly not the first time, either in this series or in Dragon Ball in general, that it's happened, but I saw the beginning of Super ignite the debate of the domesticated Videl. Given that she refers to her martial arts background here, but all we've seen her do so far in this series is keep house and be a mother, it seems appropriate to bring it up. Now, there is nothing wrong with wanting to be a wife and or mother, the same as there's nothing wrong with Gohan wanting to be a scholar rather than a fighter. Those are all essential and valuable life paths. If that's the life Videl wants, and she and her family are able to make that happen, especially when their child is an infant, more power to her. But of course, Videl is not a person. She's a fictional character. She's a fictional character in a universe where those who make the decisions seem to believe this is the only outcome for plucky young martial arts girls. And more pointedly, this is in an episode where the adults are placing expectations on a newborn baby. That's why I greatly appreciate it that Videl wants Pan to choose her own path. Pan is a character who, even more than 30 years after her introduction, has never grown up. Not in the present of the story. I certainly hope that Pan might be able to break that cycle, beyond childhood that is. It's great that Videl talks about her nuanced identity of a martial artist who is also feminine. I think her point, though, would be a bit stronger if we were still seeing that martial arts aspect to her identity. Still, though, I think her new look for Super is really cute. Oh, fashion No, not yet. We'll get there. Not today, though. Just giving you a little taste. Unfortunately for our peaceful girl chat, Bluma happens to bring up that Vegeta has been training with Whis for the past 6 months. Goku, in the storage closet, overhears this and Kool-Aid Mans his way into this conversation. He's determined now to train with Whis too. Unfortunately, Bluma has no way of contacting him, and since he just visited recently, he might not be back for a while. Goku can't find Vegeta's key to teleport to him either. Instead, he'll have to wait patiently for Bluma to receive a visit from Whis. Unfortunately for Bluma, Goku cannot wait patiently, and we are treated to a montage of Goku constantly appearing at inopportune times to bother Bluma. Again, Dragon Ball Super, if nothing else, is a hilarious show. Finally, Bluma travels to Goku's house just to give him a cell phone so he'll leave her alone. And when Chi-Chi spots the phone, Goku lies to her face and says he has it to help plan Pan's surprise birthday party. Okay, I'm beginning to sympathize with Chi-Chi again. Goku's phone finally rings. Whis has arrived. Unlike with Vegeta, Whis doesn't make Goku jump through any hoops. He agrees to take Goku back with him, only asking for Goku to give him some time to eat and hang out with his bestie. Unfortunately for Goku, Goku cannot wait patiently, and he almost sabotages his own chances. On top of that, Gohan has been spying on his father, realizes that if Chi-Chi finds out what Goku is doing, he'll be dead meat, and then immediately lets it slip to her anyway, somehow. The argument becomes so intense that Whis decides to just leave, and that's when Goku makes his move, running after Whis and jumping into his portal. I think another trait that Dragon Ball Super has that prior Dragon Ball stories have not is that it tends to be self-aware of and lean into fan perception. There's another episode way later that really cements this for me. In classic Dragon Ball, there's always the joke, or the debate in fandom, that Goku always abandons his family. However, as I'm sure I've talked about over the years, there is plenty of room for debate. The idea can be somewhat overblown. Most of the times Goku leaves, it's under unique, sometimes unavoidable circumstances. Here, he literally runs away from his wife and jumps into a magic portal to escape his family.
Bye, son! I'm beginning to think I have issues.
The memes have become reality. Well, a fictional reality. It can be frustrating, it can also be funny. These episodes are a fantastic start to this story arc, if you can even classify them as such. This is still a weird adjustment for me because classic Dragon Ball doesn't have installments that are so episodic. Well, the animated version sometimes does for its original content, but that was not my focus in Dragon Ball Dissection. The manga almost never stops to smell the roses. That's almost certainly a reason why people refer to episodes like these as filler, because they mimic the structure of a classic filler episode. I know I did a big topic on filler 2 years ago when talking about GT, a show that technically can't have filler in the definition of added content. Because of the nature of Dragon Ball Super's creation in varying forms, which is about to get even more complicated, its content falls in a bit more of a gray area. These are definitely stories that don't exist in the Dragon Ball Super manga. Of course, this story arc in its entirety doesn't exist in the Dragon Ball Super manga. I think it's pointless to try to put a label on this. The Dragon Ball Super television series stands on its own except for the things that it fails to cover. These are good episodes. That's the point I'm trying to make. I knew I'd get there eventually. Whether you want to think of them as necessary details to the story or the best type of filler that adds depth to the characters, it's just good stuff. Dragon Ball Super has a lot of problems with franchise fatigue and compelling drama, but it excels at making me laugh. It allows me to spend time with the characters in a way I rarely get to do in classic Dragon Ball, especially Toriyama's Dragon Ball. For me, it's a wonderful change of pace to experience multiple stories of Goku's and Vegeta's personal struggles to get trained by Whis. It's entertainingly breezy to see Bluma and Whis spend time together. It's adorable to see Gohan raising and playing with his baby. It's occasionally annoying, but also vitally important to see Chi-Chi struggle with her role as a responsible grandparent. I'm not saying that slice of life is all I want Dragon Ball to be. What I am saying is that spending time with the characters and knowing what they care about and why helps me get invested in what they're fighting for. And if I don't have that investment, none of the rest of it matters. Thanks so much for watching. As the Resurrection F story really starts moving, can it maintain this level of quality? Or can it only be at its best when it's not doing much of anything at all? Well, that's something we'll find out next time as we continue into Part 2. As a bit of behind-the-scenes context, the only copy of Dragon Ball Super I had were the downloads I collected as the series was originally airing. I tracked down and bought the Blu-rays for these videos because I wanted to get screen caps that did not have TV station watermarks on them. It's also very comforting to me to have Steve Simmons' subtitles again. I've been trusting them for decades now. I always try to invest in the videos that I make here to give you the best that I can. If you'd like to help and join the names of these awesome people, please join my Mr. Fusion Patreon. I'll see you next time.